Hello and welcome to this video series on animal health and biosecurity brought to you by Farmers Weekly. I'm Janine Ryan, the editor of Farmers Weekly, and in this series we bring you experts in the fields of animal health and biosecurity to help you make better informed decisions on your livestock concerns. My guest today is Dr Mirinda van Kleef. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. So to start off with, can you just explain to us what your role at the ARC is?
I'm in the Vaccine and Diagnostic Development Program, and I'm responsible for developing new and novel vaccines for animal diseases.
What is meant by the term disease management, and what does it entail?
Disease management is proactive, and it therefore then prevents a disease from occurring. And the most important thing that it entails is you need to have a vaccine program in place, and you also need to have a dip-in program in place. And this is all to ensure that your livestock is able to prevent the disease from occurring in the first place.
And how can farmers develop their own disease strategy? Are there any initial steps that they need to take to do that?
Yes, because diseases all diseases don't occur everywhere. It depends on the climate, the vegetation, etc. So a farmer needs to know what disease occurs within that farming area, and then they need to incorporate a corresponding vaccine program within their breeding and farming program. And this will ensure that the animals are immune to any diseases that might be present there, so they can respond quickly and then prevent the disease from happening. And the farmers also need to regularly monitor the animals for any signs of disease. And if they are unsure of the diagnosis of the disease, they can contact their veterinarian. And it's very important that they get an early and accurate diagnosis of the disease so that they can do the correct prevention and treatment, so that the disease doesn't manifest itself. And it's also a good idea to then keep any diseased animals away from the whole flock so that the disease doesn't spread. And they can also then incorporate a dip-in program, and this helps to eliminate any tick vectors or insect vectors which are responsible for transmitting any diseases.
And just in terms of a pest resistance, for example, is there a big problem with that at the moment in South Africa? Do we see a lot of ticks, for example, that are resistant to various insecticides?
Yes, you do. Tick resistance to insecticides are becoming more and more prominent, as well as the diseases which are becoming resistant to any antibiotic treatment. That's why it's not a good idea to just always be treating your animals. Prevention is better, because then you also prevent the resistance to antibiotics. So when you really need to apply antibiotic, it'll be more effective. And that's where the vaccine program comes in. So you can vaccinate your animals so they are immune and they can respond quicker to the disease.
And in terms of legislation, are there mandatory vaccines for cattle and sheep, for example?
To my knowledge, no, there's not. So it's on the onus of each farmer to make sure that the animals are correctly and routinely vaccinated to the diseases that occur in the area.
Who can farmers contact in terms of vaccine supply?
They need to contact Onderstepoort Biological Products, which is a state-owned entity that is mandated to produce veterinary vaccines of strategic and economic importance.
And would it always just be OBP, or could they contact local suppliers? Or
they could contact local suppliers if there are any such available, but generally I think OBP produces the most vaccines at the moment.
So getting to the technical side, what is the process of developing a vaccine?
Most current vaccines that are available are either live or attenuated vaccines, and they have got numerous disadvantages coupled to them. For example, they have to be transported at minus 80 degrees Celsius to keep them viable before they are administered to the animal. They can't be used in areas where the vector might be present but where the disease doesn't occur. So we at Agricultural Research Institute at the Onderstepoort Veterinary Research Institute our aim is to develop novel vaccines. And our focus there is either to develop an mRNA or a DNA vaccine. And these vaccines contain just the specific genetic material coding for the specific antigen which induces the appropriate immune response. So therefore we need to know exactly what the immune response is that the animal needs to evoke to protect it against a specific disease. And each animal will induce a different immune response. So once we know what the specific immune response is, then we go and we look at the proteins and the antigens which induce that specific immune response. And it can be quite complex, so we need to identify more than one protein which induces the various arms of the immune response. So once we have that, we combine it into a DNA vaccine. Then we look for an appropriate delivery system to ensure that the DNA vaccine is protected until it enters the cells. Then we do animal trials where we test it in animals and we challenge the animals with the disease to make sure that they are protected or not towards the disease. And then once we are happy that this vaccine is effective, then we can transfer the knowledge and the technology to Onderstepoort biological products. Then they have to do further data collection and testing by doing field trials, testing whether the vaccine is safe, whether it can be used in pregnant animals, whether the duration of immunity. And then once they have got all the data which is necessary in order to register the vaccine, they then register at SAPRA, which is the South African Health Products Regulatory Association. Once they are okay with all the data that has been collected, the vaccine can be registered, and then Onderstepoort Biological Products can produce and sell the vaccine to the farmers.
So how long does that process take typically?
It can take 10 to 20 years. It's a very long, complex process, and you need a lot of funding for it.
So does that mean that the mRNA and the DNA vaccines are more practical in terms of being able to actually immunize animals, so that it doesn't have to be stored at negative 80 degrees Celsius, for example?
Yes, they're definitely more practical in that you don't have to store them in even a refrigeration. You can just keep them at ambient temperatures. And they are very simple. They don't have all the other complex, unwanted and unnecessary proteins and DNA and whatever within the formulation, which makes it very much more simpler to make sure that it's a safe vaccine to administer.
Are there any vaccines that we can expect coming onto the market anytime soon that uses this new technology?
Well, we have developed a heartwater vaccine, and at the moment it's a DNA vaccine, and it's got multi-epitopes within it, and at the moment it induces about 60% protection. So we are looking at means, and we do have means to try and see if we can improve that percentage of protection. It has been patented, so we are moving forward, and hopefully it would be on the market in the near future. It's not going to be tomorrow or next year, but in the near future.
Thank you very much. That was very, very interesting.
Thank you very much for having me.